Eleanor sat quietly in her small, dimly lit living room, her hands folded neatly in her lap as the world outside continued to bustle. The ticking of the clock on the wall echoed softly, a reminder of the passage of time. At 68 years old, she had seen the world change in ways that she never expected. Her body was no longer as strong as it once was, but her heart was as full of love as ever. Love for her children, her grandchildren, but especially for Jacob. Jacob, her grandson, was 16, an age full of promise and hope, but also confusion and rebellion. He had lived with her since the tragic accident that took his parents' lives when he was just 10. His parents had been young and full of dreams, but fate had a different plan for them. Now, the weight of raising Jacob rested solely on Eleanor's shoulders. She never thought she would find herself in this position, but life had a way of throwing curveballs. She had raised her own children, and now, in the twilight of her years, she was tasked with guiding this young boy through the stormy seas of adolescence. Eleanor often found herself lost in thought, remembering the days when Jacob's parents were just as young and full of promise. But now, she saw the same struggles in him that she saw in her own children, struggles she could not easily fix. Jacob was a bright boy, full of potential, but there was something holding him back. He had inherited the same stubbornness and sense of pride that had made his parents' lives so difficult. He resisted the help she tried to offer, refusing to acknowledge the sacrifices she made on his behalf. But what troubled Eleanor the most was Jacob's growing sense of uncertainty. He was beginning to doubt himself, question his future, and wonder if he was capable of anything. It hurt her deeply to see him struggle. She had watched her children go through similar turmoil, but they never had the opportunities that Jacob had, opportunities that she was determined to give him. She thought back to her own childhood, a time when her dreams had been as big as the sky. She had wanted to be something more, to leave a mark on the world. But those dreams were slowly extinguished as life's responsibilities took hold of her. She had to give them up, first for her husband, then for her children. Eleanor had always been the one to put others before herself, sacrificing her own desires for the sake of her family. And now, here she was, once again facing the same choice, to sacrifice her own happiness for Jacob's future. What if he's not ready? She wondered. What if I give him this chance, and it only leads to more disappointment? What if I fail him like I failed my own children? The fear crept in like an unwelcome guest, and she couldn't shake it. But she knew deep down that this decision would shape the rest of his life, and she couldn't let him slip through the cracks like so many others in the family had before him. Eleanor had one thing that could change everything for Jacob: the family inheritance. It wasn't much in the grand scheme of things, but it was enough to give Jacob a head start in life. It was enough to send him to college, to provide him with opportunities that she never had. The money had been passed down through generations, a small but significant sum, and now it was hers to give. She had been holding on to it for years, unsure of when the right moment would come. And now, that moment was here. But giving Jacob the inheritance was not an easy decision. She knew that money could be both a blessing and a curse. She had seen it tear families apart, destroy dreams, and create division where there had once been unity. Would giving Jacob the money be a gift or a burden? Would it give him the tools to succeed, or would it make him lazy and entitled? Eleanor wrestled with the idea, her mind a storm of conflicting thoughts and emotions. If I give him this, I'll be taking away his chance to earn it on his own, she thought. But if I don't, he may never have the chance to do anything at all. The weight of the decision pressed down on her. She had always prided herself on being strong, on making the right choices, but this felt different. This wasn't just about her anymore. It was about Jacob's future. He had been through so much already, and she didn't want to see him fail. But at what cost? As the days passed, Eleanor's thoughts were consumed by the inheritance. She knew that it could change everything for Jacob, but she wasn't sure if she was ready to let go of it. It was the last piece of security she had left, the last thing that kept her connected to the past. She had always taken care of her family, and now it was her turn to give something back to Jacob. But would he appreciate it? Would he see it for what it was? A chance, a gift, a way out of the cycle of hardship that had defined their family for generations. One evening, as the sun set and the sky turned a deep orange, Eleanor sat down with Jacob. Her heart was heavy, her mind made up. She had to tell him. "Jacob," she said softly, her voice trembling just a little, "there's something I need to talk to you about." Jacob looked up from the book he was reading, sensing the seriousness in her tone. "What's wrong, Grandma?" Eleanor took a deep breath, her hands shaking slightly. "I've been thinking a lot about your future, and I've come to a decision. I want to give you the family inheritance." Jacob looked at her, confused. "What do you mean?" Eleanor looked into his eyes, searching for the right words. "It's money that's been passed down in our family. I've been holding on to it, hoping the right moment would come. I think it's time now." Jacob's eyes widened. "But tell me why me?" "Because I believe in you, Jacob. You've got so much potential, and I want you to have the chance to do something with your life, to have opportunities one never had. I'm not giving it to you just to make your life easier, but to give you a chance to build your future." Jacob remained silent, staring at her with a mixture of confusion and disbelief. He had always felt like a burden to Eleanor, and now, here she was offering him something he never thought he would have, a chance, but he wasn't sure if he was ready to accept it. The decision, Jacob's mind raced. He had always known his grandmother loved him, but this was something different. Eleanor had been the one constant in his life, and now she was offering him something far more valuable than anything he could imagine. The inheritance, something passed down from generations, a tangible connection to a history that he barely understood. He had always felt like he didn't belong, like he was an outsider in his own family. But now, Eleanor was offering him a piece of that history, a way to change everything. But the weight of the decision was overwhelming. Jacob hesitant. "Grandma, I don't know what to say. I've never asked for this. I don't even know if I'm worthy of it. It's too much, too fast." Eleanor's heart sank at the uncertainty in his voice. She knew he wasn't ready to accept it, not yet. But she also knew that if she didn't offer it now, it might never happen. Jacob had been struggling with his future, uncertain of his place in the world, and she couldn't let that continue. He needed direction, a push, and she was willing to give him all she had, even if he didn't fully understand it. "Eleanor," softly, "I didn't want to burden you with this, Jacob, but I see the way you're struggling. I see how lost you are. I'm not asking you to take it all at once, but this could change things for you. You don't have to carry the weight of the world alone." Jacob looked down at his hands, his fingers nervously tapping on the arm of the chair. He had always been the type to keep his emotions locked away, but this was different. The pressure of his grandmother's love, her sacrifice, was too much to bear. "Jacob, what if I fail, Grandma? What if I mess this up? What if I'm not good enough? I don't want to let you down." Eleanor gently, "You already have the potential, Jacob. What I'm offering isn't a guarantee. It's just a chance to build something, to make something of yourself. You're not alone in this, not anymore. You have me, and you have this gift, but what you do with it is up to you." The silence between them stretched on, and Jacob could feel the weight of her words pressing down on him. He had never been good with responsibility. His life had always been defined by his grandmother's care, her constant presence, and now, with this offer, he was being asked to step up, to become someone different. He wasn't sure if he was ready for that, but something inside him stirred, a flicker of hope that he hadn't felt in years. "Jacob," quietly, "what if I don't know how to start?" Eleanor reached over and placed her hand on his, a comforting gesture that made him feel both small and supported at the same time. "Eleanor, we'll figure it out together, one step at a time. You don't have to have all the answers right now, but this is your chance, Jacob. Don't let fear stop you." Jacob took a deep breath. He had always felt like his future was out of his hands, but now, it felt like for the first time in his life, he had control. The inheritance wasn't just money. It was a chance for him to define who he would become, to step out of the shadows of his family's past, and make a future of his own. For the first time in a long while, Jacob felt a glimmer of hope. It wasn't much, but it was enough to spark something inside him. Maybe, just maybe, he could be more than he ever thought he could be. Jacob, I'll take it, Grandma. I'll try. I won't let you down. Eleanor's eyes softened, tears threatening to spill. She knew this was the beginning of something new for both of them. She wasn't just giving Jacob a gift. She was giving him a future. And in return, Jacob was giving her something just as precious. Hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, the sacrifices of the past would lead to brighter future. The beginning of change. Days turned into weeks, and Jacob's life began to shift in subtle ways. With Eleanor's guidance, he started taking his future more seriously. She enrolled him in a local workshop on financial literacy and business management, skills that she hoped would help him make the most of the inheritance, no matter how much or little it might be. At first, Jacob struggled. He felt out of place among the others, who seemed more polished and confident. But Eleanor never wavered in her support. She kept reminding him that growth wasn't always easy, that the discomfort was part of the process. Jacob's mornings began to fill with lessons. He learned about budgeting, saving, and investing, topics that had never been part of his world. Eleanor even started him on a small project, advising him to invest some of the inheritance into a business idea he'd been toying with for a while. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get his feet wet. Jacob, musing one day, "It feels weird, Grandma, like I'm stepping into someone else's life. But I'm also starting to see it, like maybe I could really do something." Eleanor smiled at him, seeing a side of Jacob she hadn't seen before. There was a fire in him, a determination that had been buried beneath years of doubt and fear. For the first time in a long while, she saw the person she had always believed he could be. But not everything was smooth sailing. Jacob's classmates at the workshop were often quick to judge him. They'd whisper behind his back, calling him a trust fund kid, assuming that he'd received the inheritance without effort. Their assumptions cut deep, making Jacob question his worth and whether he truly deserved what he was given. Jacob, one evening, frustrated, "Grandma, I don't know if I can keep doing this. It feels like they all look at me like I'm nothing but money. Maybe they're right. Maybe I'm not cut out for this after all." Eleanor was quiet for a moment, letting his words sink in. She had seen this before, self-doubt creeping in when the world seemed too big, too harsh. But she wouldn't let him give up. Eleanor, firmly, "They don't know you, Jacob. What they think doesn't matter. This is your journey, not theirs. You've worked hard for what you have, and you'll keep working hard. You're not defined by what others say or think. You are defined by what you do next." Her words hit him hard. He wanted to argue, to give in to the temptation to quit, but something inside him stirred. She was right. He wasn't defined by the opinions of others. This was his life, and he had a chance to make it count. The days turned into months, and slowly, Jacob began to see results. He put his newfound knowledge to use, managing the small business venture he'd started with Eleanor's help. It wasn't a massive success, but it was progress. The first time he saw a return on his investment, no matter how small, he felt a rush of pride that he had never felt before. It was proof that he could do this. One evening, Jacob sat down with his grandmother after a long day of work. He was tired, his hands calloused from the effort, but there was a sense of fulfillment in his heart that he hadn't felt before. Jacob, smiling, "I don't know how to thank you, Grandma. You've given me more than just money. You've given me a chance to believe in myself." Eleanor smiled back, her heart full. "You've always had it in you, Jacob. I just helped you see it." Days turned into weeks, and Jacob found himself facing new challenges. The business he had launched with his grandmother's guidance wasn't growing as quickly as he hoped. The initial excitement had faded, replaced by the reality of hard work and constant obstacles. Yet, It was in these moments of struggle that Jacob learned his most valuable lessons. He faced disappointment after disappointment, slow sales, unsatisfied customers, and endless problems that seemed impossible to solve. With each setback, his confidence waned and doubts about his abilities crept in. Jacob, with frustration, "Grandma, maybe I wasn't cut out for this. The business isn't working, and every decision feels like it's wrong." Eleanor watched him, her face showing both concern and understanding. She had seen him go through tough times before, but this was different. Jacob was no longer the boy she once knew. He was growing into someone who could handle this, if only he believed in himself. Eleanor, calmly, "Failure isn't the end, Jacob. You need to stop seeing it as a sign to quit. Every person who has ever achieved something has faced failure. What matters now is how you respond." Jacob looked at her, feeling torn. The weight of his responsibilities pressed on him. His pride, his self-doubt, and his fear of failing weighed heavily on him. Jacob, quietly, "But what if I'm not good enough? What if I let you down? What if this inheritance wasn't meant for me?" Eleanor smiled gently and put a hand on his shoulder, her voice firm but filled with love. "Eleanor, Jacob, this is your journey. What matters is not what you fear, but what you choose to do next. You will stumble, but you will rise. That's the key to everything." Jacob took a deep breath, her words sinking deep into his heart. For the first time in weeks, he felt a spark of hope, a reminder that growth came from facing difficulties, not avoiding them. He made a decision right then. He would not let fear decide his future. The next morning, Jacob returned to his business, determined to make it work. He spent countless hours reevaluating his strategy, refining his approach, and rethinking every decision. His approach was no longer based on assumptions. He dug deep into what worked and what didn't. Slowly but surely, things began to improve. The change wasn't overnight, but it was real. Jacob's sales numbers grew steadily, and he started receiving positive feedback from customers who had previously been skeptical. He realized that business wasn't just about making money. It was about learning and adapting every step of the way. Months later, Jacob stood beside Eleanor one evening, looking over the success of his small but growing business. He felt tired but satisfied, his heart filled with pride. Jacob, grinning, "You were right, Grandma. I've learned more from my failures than I ever thought I would." Eleanor's eyes sparkled as she nodded, proud of the man her grandson was becoming. "Eleanor, that's the truth of it, Jacob. Failures aren't a roadblock. They're a lesson. And every time you learn, you grow stronger." Jacob smiled, feeling the weight of his grandmother's words and the years of wisdom she had shared. He was no longer the uncertain young man who had stumbled into the inheritance. He was building something real, something lasting, and he knew deep down this was only the beginning. A legacy restored. The months that followed proved to be a turning point in Jacob's life. His business continued to grow, slowly but surely. He was no longer a passive recipient of his inheritance, but an active creator of his own future. Each challenge he faced made him stronger, more determined to succeed. Eleanor, though proud of his progress, never allowed him to rest too comfortably. She reminded him that there was always more to learn, more to give, and more to achieve. Even when he succeeded, she encouraged him to think of the next step, the next goal. One day, Jacob found himself staring at the large ledger on his desk, a visible reminder of the progress he had made. The numbers had turned from red to black, and for the first time in years, he felt genuinely secure. But it wasn't the money that filled him with satisfaction. It was the feeling that he had finally become the man he had always wanted to be. Jacob, reflecting, "I never thought I'd get here, Grandma. Not like this. I didn't just inherit money. I inherited a lesson, a chance to change." Eleanor stood beside him, her face proud but humble as always. Eleanor, smiling, "Jacob, it wasn't the money that mattered. It was what you chose to do with it. You found your way by doing the hard work. You built your future from nothing but your own efforts. Jacob smiled, grateful for the wisdom that had guided him all these years. But now, he was ready to share his lessons. He wanted to teach others that the path to success was never easy, but it was worth it. The day came when Eleanor, now older, sat with Jacob one last time. She had always been his mentor, his guide, but she knew that it was time to let him stand on his own. With a soft smile, she handed him a letter, sealed with care. Eleanor, gently, "This is for you. It's my final wish, Jacob, not just for you, but for everyone who has walked with us on this journey." Jacob opened the letter, his eyes scanning the words written in his grandmother's familiar handwriting. It was a message of wisdom, one that would guide him through the years to come. But it also contained a request, a legacy that Jacob had to carry forward. As he read her words, tears welled up in his eyes. Eleanor's faith in him had always been unwavering, and now, as her help began to fade, he felt the weight of her belief. Jacob whispering, "I promise, Grandma, I'll carry on your legacy." Eleanor passed away peacefully not long after, knowing that Jacob was prepared to face whatever the future held. The inheritance she had left him wasn't just money or property. It was the tools to succeed, the lessons to thrive, and the knowledge that he had everything inside of him to build a better world. And Jacob did just that. He expanded his business, using the profits to fund local charities and give back to the community that had supported him. He created a foundation in his grandmother's name, providing opportunities to others who had been overlooked or underestimated, just like he once had been. In the end, Jacob's journey wasn't about wealth or success. It was about transformation, the transformation of a man who had been lost and uncertain into someone who believed in his own power to change the world. As the years passed, Jacob's legacy flourished. His business reached new heights, and his philanthropic efforts expanded, touching the lives of many who had once struggled just as he had. He had become a beacon of hope in his community, a reminder that with perseverance, anything was possible. Jacob often found himself reflecting on the lessons Eleanor had instilled in him. They had shaped him into the man he was today. He hadn't just built a successful business. He had built a life based on integrity, resilience, and kindness. One evening, as he stood at the very spot where he and Eleanor had once shared countless conversations, Jacob smiled. The foundation he had established, both for his business and for his community, was now a lasting tribute to his grandmother's wisdom and love. Her legacy lived on, not just in his actions, but in the countless lives he had touched along the way. Jacob, whispering to the wind, "Thank you, Grandma. I've made it." And with that, he knew that his journey wasn't over. It had only just begun. A legacy fulfilled. Years passed, and Jacob's life had come full circle. The once uncertain young man, burdened with fear and self-doubt, had transformed into a confident, compassionate leader, both in business and in life. His grandmother's legacy was no longer just an inheritance of wealth. It was a living testament to strength, resilience, and the unwavering belief in others. Jacob stood in the community center he had built, watching as a new generation of hopeful entrepreneurs took their first steps, guided by the very principles Eleanor had taught him. The walls of the center were adorned with quotes and memories of his grandmother, each one a reminder of the journey they had shared and the lessons that had shaped him. He thought back to those early days, when he had struggled to find his way. There had been moments of doubt, but through it all, he had learned that success was not a destination. It was a journey of growth, learning, and giving. As Jacob looked out over the room filled with eager faces, he realized that he had achieved more than he had ever imagined, not just in terms of wealth, but in the lives he had touched, the opportunities he had created, and the people he had helped rise above their struggles. With a smile, he knew that his grandmother would be proud. Her wisdom, love, and strength had shaped him into the man he was, and now he was passing that on. The cycle had come full circle, but this time, Jacob was the one leading the way. Jacob, softly to himself, "Thank you, Grandma. You gave me everything I needed to become who I am. And now, I'm ready to give that back." With that, Jacob stepped forward, ready to continue the work he had started, a work that would never truly end. It was a legacy that would live on for generations to come, always reminding those who followed that with faith, determination, and love, anything was possible.